Welcome to the number one hope peddling podcast for your Miami Dolphins. I am Omar Kelly, Miami Herald columnist. Joining me is hope peddler number one, Barry Jackson, who consistently keeps telling people, hey, playoffs are not out of the question. You've got a chance. The moon and the stars can align, and your Dolphins can get right in there. Dolphins took care of the San Francisco 49ers 29-17. In a surprising victory. I'm not going to lie, Barry. I was surprised.
I told you so. I don't want to be the guy who said I told you so. I hate when people do that to me, but I told you so. Even though your arguments were very valid last week about San Francisco having better trenches and Bosa was going to wreak all kinds of havoc, and Greenlaw before he was out was going to wreak all kinds of havoc, I had a sneaking suspicion. These mid-December home games, the Dolphins show up. They did against Dallas. I figured they'd have too much pride to lay an egg yesterday. I guess the surprise yesterday was against the San Francisco defense. It's been diminished by injury, but it's still pretty good. How in the world did they suddenly find a running game? What in the world happened? It wasn't entirely Isaiah Wynn, even though he played well. What happened to cause that? It was a glorious moment on awaiting Christmas.
Listen, they made the switch to Isaiah Wynn, and they rotated with Liam Eichenberg. So let's not just absolutely crown Isaiah Wynn because Liam Eichenberg was in there. But on that final run, which was, how was it, a 50-yard?
Yeah, so it was Isaiah Wynn with a great block.
Isaiah Wynn with a great block that sprung Devon Achane. But they had 114 yards before that final run. So
absolutely. And I want to hand it yesterday to two guys that we have great respect for, Teron Armstead and Kendall Lamb, both dealing with injuries against a vaunted 49ers pass rush, having to deal with Bosa, et cetera. They did not allow a single pressure, let alone a sack. They were fine in the running game. Teron Armstead, if this is it for him, he is going out on an elite level. And hopefully the Dolphins can find a way where they can convince him to take another pay cut. I'm not sure why he would, but he has been, in my mind, the Dolphins' most consistently good player this year. He had one game that was shaky, but he's been elite as a run blocker and a pass blocker the entire rest of the season, if you believe your eyes, if you believe Pro Football Focus. And Lamb, who had struggled some as a run blocker, I thought did well yesterday. And he's done a good job against Matt Crosby and the 49ers. So give him credit for that, even though Austin Jackson's missed in the run game.
I have a question for you because I asked this on Twitter, and I'm sure you saw it. But I'm going to make the argument to you that Teron Armstead, even though he's been here 3 years, even though he's battled injuries, has probably been Miami Dolphins' best offensive lineman since Richmond Webb. Tell me I'm wrong.
I agree with you. I saw there was some pushback. I don't know if people were mentioning
Some people said Jake Long, but I would make the argument to you. Tell me the good offensive line that Jake Long was on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Armstead's work has been consistently excellent. The only question has been durability. And it's not going to get any better with age. But to his credit, he's missed only 2 games this year, which I think is probably beyond anyone's expectations. I guess the only negative with the line yesterday, just to get it out of the way, the holding penalties, so exasperating. 3 very, very damaging ones yesterday. 2 by Rob Jones, who, by the way, didn't allow quarterback pressure. So credit to Rob Jones for that. But demerits to Rob Jones for the 2 holding
Aaron
penalties.
Brewer had a nasty one as well. But
yeah, there was one by Brewer as well. Yeah.
Here's my thought process on I did not expect Teron to come back. And this is one thing I don't understand because I wasn't there that Friday where he basically told you he had no function in the leg. Like, what the hell does that mean, Barry? I don't understand. I really okay, it's not knee pain. It's, no function in it. Like, what does that mean, Barry?
Yeah, it was a brief exchange David Furones and I had with Teron. I was shocked he even admitted he was optimistic he was going to play, but David sought clarity as to why he left the Jets game after 5 plays. He said it had nothing to do with pain. It's just that he couldn't function. So I took it to mean that he didn't have enough strength in his leg or power or mobility to do the job. But thankfully, it fixed itself over the last couple of weeks. So that was a good sign yesterday. The evolution of Malik Washington. I know we're going to get to a lot of things in the show. The evolution of Malik Washington, all the credit to the young man for going from a guy that you and I thought in early August was lost. We even wondered, are they going to try to stack this guy?
I didn't think he was good. I didn't think he was lost. I didn't think he was good. I'm not even going to front with you, Barry. We watched training camp outside of the final exhibition game against Tampa Bay. I thought he sucked. I didn't think he belonged on the 53-man roster. And listen, I'm the first person, and this is what people don't understand. I have my beliefs and I have my thoughts and I have my convictions that's based on what I see. But if that changes, I will tell you it changes. And Malik Washington, to his credit, I remember we talked to Wes Welker one week, and Wes Welker was showering him with praise before he was really contributing. I think he started a game, and that's the one thing people don't understand. When the Dolphins let you start, it's because you've earned it. It's not because they felt like, oh, let's get the rookie a start. Let's be, Chop Robinson barely starts. And he's your best pass rusher, but he can't functionally do all that the job entails, so he doesn't start. Malik Washington has earned a start. He's earned a slot role.
Yes. Guess who played the most snaps, Omar, among Dolphins receivers yesterday?
No
Malik
way.
Washington played 58. Tyreek Hill played 56. They might have found themselves a third receiver, at the very worst a fourth, but good value, obviously, fifth round. And, of course, I was thrilled yesterday. They took Jeff Wilson out of mothballs. I've been calling for it all year. When you can't run the ball on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, why was their toughest, most physical back not playing? They did it yesterday. He converted the first down, of course. He had a big smile on his face. He had 2 carries for 12 yards. So kudos to McDaniel, even though it was 2 months too late to finally get Wilson in the game. And yesterday also, tell me your thoughts on this. Anyone who doesn't have an appreciation for Shane's versatility, even though obviously there had been some hiccups in the run game over the last month, what he does as a receiver, and I know that's not a skill that you maybe value the most in a running back, but what he does as a receiver can't be overlooked. Most catches now by a Dolphins running back for a single season, beating out Terry Kirby. He leads the league among running backs in receptions. He is a weapon as a receiver. Obviously, master the obvious with that statement, but that has real value, no?
I don't like it. And I haven't hidden the fact that I don't like it. I don't like it because it's evolved the offense. Now you're what, the 16th best offense in the NFL when you used to be number 1, and maybe that has a lot to do with what's happened to Tyreek Hill, and we'll get into that a little bit. But we also need to touch on Jonnu Smith setting all the tight end franchise records except for touchdowns, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, he's one away from Anthony Fasano's record of 7 on that. And also Keith Jackson had 7, so he has 6. He can break that record. But go on.
Achan, here's my thing, and I'm glad that the run game has found life or new life or a resurgence. Let's hope that Kendall Lamb's back holds up. Let's hope that Teron Armstead's knee holds up. But I thought Achan could be a 1,000-yard runner, and it's not happening. But then again, he's also leading the team in receptions. Now, here's my problem with it, Barry, and please understand where I'm coming from. There's no effing way that Tyreek Hill should be the number 3 targeted player on any football team in not just the United States of America, but the world.
The world.
The world.
I'm with you. It's been a ridiculous year involving Tyreek. Part of it is clearly his fault, as we've seen in the last couple of games. They haven't gotten him the ball enough. They haven't had the trust in the offensive line or whatever to make vertical attempts. It's been the most mystifying thing I can remember to see a player ranked number 1 by his peers, one of the most dominant players in football, to become, I don't want to say marginal because he's better than that, but to become an average NFL starter. We're not saying that's what he is for good, but I mean, what has he shown this year that would give you hope moving forward? Yeah, I guess you just have to hope based on the fact that he's been a Hall of Fame caliber player in his career and he's still young enough to get things going next year.
But this is a Devontae Parker-esque season. It's like I'm stunned at what I'm seeing. The 2 end zone passes, and I think one was broken up, but then one just dropped.
Right. And 2 others as well were catchable balls. And last week, as good a player as Stingley is, he had no business being beaten for that ball. Jamar Chase would have grabbed that ball. Justin Jefferson would have grabbed that ball. Tyreek Hill a year ago would have grabbed that ball. Right? I mean, this is what you expect from an elite receiver earning $27 million. I know he's taking accountability, but why the fall off? And I wanted to know, I was very curious last night what your opinion was going to be on the practice issue, where Tyreek says, I need to practice more after taking Wednesdays as a rest day virtually all the season.
You know what? That's a little hard for me because here, and understand, this is a situation where Mike McDaniel, based on how he grew up in the NFL, and this is something that's come from Mike Shanahan, I talked to veterans who played under Mike Shanahan. If you're 30, they give you get a veteran rest day. And Tyreek, it's not like Tyreek has taken it every year, every week. Because that, even though Tyreek shows up late to practice and has showed up late to training camp because he's doing other things inside the building, and then he comes out. And I always thought that was unfair to the cornerbacks. Like, they'll be out there practicing for 45 minutes, and then Tyreek just walks in from inside the air conditioner, and then all of a sudden he's there in 7-on-7s or team drills, and then he's like roasting them for a 60-yard reception. I never thought that was fair, but I was like, you know what? Life isn't fair. But what's happened is he basically came out and said, and I think he volunteered to talk, because Tyreek is the first person to escape when, in games, but lately, especially on the road, he's been the first person to talk, because he's trying to step up and be a leader, and I commend him for that. He's trying to set the tone, and he knows that eyes are on him. So when he played like trash, and do you know any better way to explain how he played?
No, I do want to. I want you to finish your thought, but I want to interject one thing. I'm careful about the words that I use. When I said marginal, obviously he's not a marginal NFL receiver. He's still a very good starter. When I said marginal, I meant marginal superstar at this point. He's got to play better to still be considered.
This is a marginal NFL
he hasn't
receiver.
Been a superstar this year.
I would say marginal. You don't have to self-step it.
Yeah,
that game was bad.
Yeah.
Who tell me any other player that we would excuse 2 passes in the end zone you drop? They're perfectly placed passes. Don't act like they weren't perfectly placed passes, and not difficult, not easy catches to make. You are the number 1 player rated by your peers, and I don't take that lightly, because I know how, say whatever you want, but the players care about that stuff. The players care. They don't care about Pro Bowl because fan voting and all that is in there. Players care about their player rating, and they've always cared about the player rating since they started doing it. You're the number 1 player in the league. You have 834 yards and 6 touchdowns. Everybody else on the team has 6 touchdowns. You are Tyreek Hill, and you're 3rd on the team in receptions at 70, 3rd on the team.
And 50-50 balls is what really worries me. That's been the biggest drop off, Omar, where Tyreek, he was one of the best receivers in the league, obviously one of the 3 best, you could say. You could make a reasonable argument for the previous 5 years. And now consistently being beaten on those 50-50 balls, it's just mystifying, because at 30, there shouldn't be a drop-off like this. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though this year's been unacceptable, and say he's going to come back strong next year, just because I think there's going to be the pride to, the determination to. I don't think he's lost much speed. He's not 35 or 36 years old. I know some are worrying maybe you'll see the drop-off like you did with Stephon Diggs. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say the body of work has been so great prior to this year that you've got to think he's going to come back, but it's just been so puzzling this year.
No, you know what? It really hasn't been puzzling, because, one, you don't have a run game. Nobody has to respect your run game. So it's easy to put a safety over top. Then he has no Jalen Waddle. So that allows people to have extra attention on him yesterday. But if you catch some of those balls that are drops, you would have 100 yards. You'd have the 2-touchdown day. You'd have a typical Tyreek Hill day. But he admitted that not practicing on Wednesday hurts me. He also admitted and said something which I find puzzling, and I hope we get to the bottom of this. My teammates know how difficult this year has been for me and what I'm going through, and they understand. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what the hell are you going through? Because I'm not going to excuse it on the wrist. I'm not going to excuse it. I've never seen you with a wrist brace other than when you had it in training camp. Never seen you with a wrist brace. Now, could that be, and I know he says he doesn't need surgery, but maybe there's some tendon damage in there that is impacting him. But then again, he's always dropped balls in big games. And we just excuse it because he's Tyreek Hill and we know he's eventually going to make it up. But the reality is he's not making it up this year. He's not making up for the mistakes that he's made. And that's kind of cost him. He talked about, I need to practice more. I need to practice more with my quarterback. I need to work on my chemistry. And that's true, because I looked at Wednesday's practice. I mean, I was out there, Barry. It was a ragtag bunch of receivers that Tua had to work with, and I'm sure Tua's not going to say anything about it. But I mean, who wants to work with Eric Uzukama for the whole day and practice squad? Like, nobody wants to do that. The problem that I have is, and here's the thing. We know they're not going to really practice these final 2 games because most NFL teams, they're on a very tapered down just to make it through the season. Just look at what 49ers, how many players did they lose in that game on?
Right. And the Dolphins are also taking Christmas off on Wednesday, which is a traditional practice day. They are coming in Tuesday, so they're giving up their Tuesday off day to work. It's not highly unusual that teams would take off Christmas. But the whole thing about the practice thing that I wonder about is this. If this was an issue where all parties felt that he needed to take more reps with Tua, why is this coming out now in December? Why didn't Tyreek or Tua or McDaniel discuss this among themselves a month ago, right? When Tyreek was underperforming.
Well, he wasn't dropping. He wasn't dropping. I don't think he wasn't dropping those passes.
Right. It was the last 2 games that have been his fault entirely, as opposed to the first 14 where you could blame other factors, such as 2 high safeties or McDaniel's play calling or accuracy or backup quarterbacks or whatever. Now, people who wonder why there are rest days, the Dolphins science department has studied this, and they feel it benefits some veterans. And in the Dolphins' defense, it hasn't. It's helped Calais Campbell stay healthy and have energy all season, taking Wednesdays off. It's helped Teron Armstead. Clearly, we've talked about what an elite level he's playing at. I guess it hasn't harmed Jordan Poyer, who's been mediocre at best this year. But those 3 players and Tyreek are primarily the ones who are getting rest days. It's not like half the team is getting rest days on Wednesday.
Yeah, and Kendall Lamb has begun to get rest days as he's become a starter, and here's the thing: when you get to that age, when you get to 30, this is what the veterans say. It's not the injuries that pile up; it's that your body takes longer to recover. So when you play a game, like especially in the trenches, like Teron Armstead and Calais Campbell, it feels like a physical. You've been in a physical car crash. If anybody's ever been in a car crash, and then they spend hours all week, chiropractor, dry needling, massage. People don't realize players get like 2-3 massages per week just to, especially in the trenches, just to make it to Sunday because your body just feels so bad. So when you're 30 or 37, goodness gracious, it's you need some time off. And to Tyreek's credit, it's not like he's always taking these Wednesdays off. It's just recently. And I swear to you, because Tyreek is one of those players where he doesn't go to the training room, so he doesn't get he does. So you don't know what injury it is. You have to go to the training room, and they have to address the injury for you to get addressed. Tyreek, since I've been here, since I've covered this team, Tyreek is never on the injury report, even though we always know he's injured. I hope the Dolphins, it's a way to skirt the rules where his own medical people address his medical issues.
Right. As long as you get treatment, you have to be on the injury report, and the Dolphins follow those rules. He's been on the injury report for the wrist because he's getting treatment for it. I guess the mystery this weekend was he was listed as questionable for personal reasons and for wrist reasons. The Dolphins are under no obligation, which made him questionable. Are there personal things going on in his life that have affected him? So that was not clarified. Perhaps that will be clarified in the coming days.
Yeah, and I really hope he just had a baby. I like Tyreek. I think Tyreek is, even though I think he's, we'll see on Christmas what he'll send out to troll the world, or even though he likes attention. I like Tyreek. I can relate to Tyreek. I speak diva receiver. It's just this season is not what anybody expected, including him. And he said that I'm learning from this because I've made it look so easy, or it's been so easy. It's not easy now. And I got it. And that's the thing. He's a worker. That's the one thing nobody's ever said, okay, Tyreek is not working, because that's clearly the case. Now, here's my question to you. We saw 1 week without Jalen Waddle. Eric Uzukama had to be elevated. Congratulations to him. He didn't really – he was so open, Barry, on one play that the fans will never see. It was a pass that deflected the line of scrimmage, but he was rolling left. Tua wasn't even looking at him. He was 40 yards downfield. Nobody was around him.
Played 7 snaps yesterday. So his Dolphins career, 3 years, 1 catch, 3 yards. He's also rushed 5 times for 22 yards. It's a shame because we see the physical talents. I know I went on a positive rant about him on Friday. We see the tantalizing skills that just has never come together. But I will say this, he did earn enough trust to get the nod over Isaiah McKenzie, who had only been here for like an hour and a half for the game, and for Tyreek Black, who has caught an NFL pass for the Jets. Craycraft played only 18 snaps. I thought we might see more from him, but it shows you the faith they have in Malik Washington to play him 59 snaps, the most among all Dolphins receivers on Sunday. Now, we have a lot defensively to get to, but I have to ask you this question because this caused so much discussion on social media. So we see this photo by one of the local newspapers yesterday. In fact, both local newspapers had it, of Steve Ross looking so thrilled and delighted as if he had won a Super Bowl. Should fans see this and think there is contentment with just being a good 9-8 win team, making the playoffs, the standards are too low, or should we just say this is an old man who rightfully is happy about his team winning its final home game against a team that was in the Super Bowl last year? What should we read into it, if anything?
Here, let me give you full transparency, and that's what I wrote my column about. I did not watch the end of the game because from the minute Steve Ross got on the sidelines, I watched Steve Ross. Like, I saw the plays, especially replay. I was watching him just to see his tone, his attitude, who's talking to him. I hope maybe the new minority owners are there and I could spot them and be able to identify them. He was golly gee, glib, happy. And as I wrote in my column, he had an extra cheesy smile to him. He was loving life. And I think that's part of his nature where he really enjoys wins. He really enjoys victories. And people don't understand, this isn't a business for him. If it was a business,
boy, for a man worth billions and billions.
Yeah, if it were a business, he probably wouldn't be spending as irresponsibly as he does. If it were a business, let's just be real about it.
Although credit to him for spending, for giving Greer everything he needs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No. And people always, he really truly does believe in first class. Everything is first class. Barry, as I said to you in the previous podcast, how often do you see the Gardner team out there tending to the facility? Every single day.
They are best at everything except winning in postseason. Outside of that, they're extraordinary in every other area. And I say that glibly also, though I do say it respectfully, because everything else they have operated in first-class way, as polls of other players will show you, where the Dolphins are consistently first in how they treat their players who play for them. So that does have value. The question is, on Ross's part, at this stage of his life, is there just contentment to accept the status quo and say, we're a relevant team, we're in the discussion for the playoffs every year, we're going to have quite possibly a winning record if you went out for 5 straight years. We were a playoff team the last 2. We came very close this year. Is that enough for him to give this regime another year? My guess is yes.
Absolutely. I watched him just so I can kind of sense the tone. Yes. Everybody's coming back, Barry. I think the only way that they weren't going to come back is if they produced a losing record. And it's still a possibility they could produce a losing record. But I think when you see that they did not quit on this coaching staff, and Mike McDaniel even talked about it, they could have quit. I've seen teams quit. They care about this coaching staff. They care about these people. Even, Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith showered, John Embry with praise for bringing this out of me. And this is a good staff. This is a good coaching staff. I have absolutely no problem with the coaching staff. I hate, and it angered me so much, Barry, when I saw a tweet or saw a post, and it was basically like, Mike McDaniel hasn't fixed anything since he's been here. And I'm thinking about it.
He fixed this quarterback.
I was like,
offense. Yeah.
I thought to myself, that's the biggest load of malarkey bullcrap I've ever heard.
Yes. And while this was his worst year, probably, obviously, in terms of not getting the vertical passing game going, not being quick enough to play Jeff Wilson, maybe not being quick enough to make some other changes, it's still
like
an excellent body of work with his offense over the 3 years. McDaniel gets high marks, starting with what he's done with Tua. He's transformed him from a below-average NFL starter to a very good NFL starter. Also, I want to mention this to you as well, which I think we're in agreement on. Anthony Weaver has maximized this defense to be a top 10 defense, both against the pass and against the run, without any established veteran pass rushers except Ogba, who's been playing with a torn biceps all season, having to rely on 38-year-old Calais, bless his heart, he's been good, having to rely on marginal nose tackles like Benito Jones, Neil Farrell, who's left the building, Matt Dickerson. They've maximized what they have, considering that Holland has regressed. I guess Holland's the one guy they haven't maximized.
Ooh, you put it on Holland?
But,
wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Well, I'm talking about everyone on defense has performed to their capabilities, probably except Javon Holland. With Poyer, the expectations are lower. No one was expecting a Pro Bowl player anymore, and obviously he's past his prime. But I think overall, in sum, against a schedule that wasn't difficult, I will say that, Anthony Weaver has maximized this defense. So I agree with you. The staff has done a good job. Where they got doomed this season was blowing a game. They had no excuse losing against Tennessee, blowing a game at the Colts that they had within their grasp before the Mostert and Ingold fumbles, obviously not signing good enough left guards and right guards, and backup quarterback. To me, to those four things, plus obviously losing Jalen Phillips and not having Bradley Chubb, that they didn't expect to have Chubb. So I would point to those 5 things as the reason the Dolphins likely will not make the playoffs. Is there something I'm leaving off the list that you will put on the epithet of this season?
The caliber of quarterback. That's it. Backup caliber of quarterback. You saw it in training camp. You know it was bad. You didn't do anything.
Right.
You could have easily signed Jimmy Garoppolo, and you chose not to. You could have had Tyler Huntley here from all of camp. You could have, and you chose not to. I will say this. You're right. I think Anthony Weaver is ready to become a head coach. Not my only concern and question about him is because can he put together a good quality staff? And I think that's a challenge oftentimes for particularly defensive coordinators. I will say this. Brian Flores did not put together a good quality staff. And say whatever you want about, look at his offensive staff, especially without Chan Gailey. Look at what he was left. You know, that was the one reason, outside of the fact that he's insubordinate and had a bad relationship with just about everybody in the organization. That's one reason to fire him, because you knew he couldn't hire a good offensive coordinator. Well, what are we doing if we can't hire a good offensive coordinator? Or retain good coaches, because a lot of people were jetting out of here because he's not a very enjoyable man to work for. But Weaver, to do what you've done, and I want to look up where they were defensive ranking, but I didn't want to mess up the podcast. To look at where you are without interceptions, without turnovers, without sacks, like, how are you doing this? And it commendable. Now you potentially lose Kendall Fuller for we don't know the prognosis of him, but that knee injury did not look like they were doing an ACL test. And let's pray and hope that it wasn't an ACL, because that would be a long road back for a guy who was expected to be your starting cornerback. And then we'd have to add that to the list of things that we need to add to this team. It's amazing, and I really do hope that Weaver, he's been in an interview circuit for the last 2 years. He is one of the leading candidates recommended from the Fitz-Pollard Alliance, which is the organization that basically wants to diversify African Americans added into the head coaching realm. So he more than likely will get interviews again. And you know what Mike McDaniel showed me?
What?
All it takes is one. There were 8 openings when Mike McDaniel got hired. He only interviewed for one of them, and he's 1 for 1 on an interview circuit.
Anthony Weaver is going to get a job at some point. He has such impressive, commanding presence in a room with people. He has
that's exactly what it is, Barry.
Yeah, so I think he's going to get a job.
And I know that owners and probably fans don't like defensive coordinators becoming head coaches because this league is so obsessed with the offense. But you know what I've learned over the years with all the duds that we've had as coaches, Barry? It's about the command and the presence. Can you lead a locker room full of manly men?
Yes, and he is one. He is one. So I give him credit for this year, and I want to quickly mention this. As far as why the Dolphins are top 10 in defense, to me, you start with 6 players. I'm going to name them in no particular order. Sealer and Calais gave you terrific years. Jordan Brooks, credit Chris Greer. It was a good signing. He was really, really productive. Chop Robinson's improvement since the start of November, among the best in terms of edge rushers with pressure, made 2 impactful game-impacting plays yesterday with the tip, which could have been a touchdown because the receiver was wide open in the end zone. He tipped that ball, then had the sack late. And then in your secondary, Jalen Ramsey's had another good year. Hasn't been extraordinary years, but it's been a very good year. And Kader Kohou, credit to Kader Kohou from coming back from a year when he had 133 passer rating in his coverage area. He has gone back to what he was as a rookie when he had an 81 passer rating against him. He's been very good. Last 2 games, 7 targets, 3 catches, 0 yards allowed, game-sealing INT yesterday. Credit to Kader Kohou. So obviously there have been others who have helped, but I start my list with those 6 players and for Anthony Weaver for doing a competent job with this defense. That's why this defense, to me, has pretty much played to its capability without Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb and without a good enough nose tackle.
You're leaving Anthony Walker Jr. off your list, and I don't like that because Anthony Walker's hemmed it all together. He's sewn it all together, Barry.
He has been competent. I have such respect for Anthony Walker. He's a hell of a leader. He's certainly an NFL starter. He was their worst player on defense yesterday, according to Pro Football Focus. He was abused in the passing game, gave up 5 catches on 5 targets for 86 yards.
It was Kittle.
He's pretty right. Obviously, he's going against
Jordan Brooks got roasted by Kittle a couple times, too. I mean,
he's going to do that to everybody. Right.
Yeah, we are talking about like one of the best tight ends. And they didn't give him extra attention either.
Correct. Can you upgrade over Walker, or do you say he's good enough? He wants to be here. He's probably not going to be too expensive. To me, that's one of the real interesting decisions of the offseason. But you need another player at the position just because Walker, with all due respect to him, and we both love the guy, he's had a history of injuries. So even if you say Anthony Walker should be re-signed as our starter next year, there has to be another starting.
I would make the argument to you, Barry. I would make the argument to you that right after nose tackles, right now in where we are in the talent that's being produced from colleges on defense, right after nose tackles, inside linebackers are probably the hardest position to find just because they have to have such a unique skill set and it's morphed and it's changed, and you have to have range and you have to have physicality. There are no more Zach Thomases in it coming from college.
Right. And coverage skills. And you can be a specialist like a David Long or a Landon Roberts and just be able to play the run well, but you're not going to get rich doing that, and you're not going to be on the field every down doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we did have a Jordan Brooks injury. We did have a Kendall Fuller injury. Those we are doing this podcast before we hear from Mike McDaniels. We will definitely give you the update later this week on what the prognosis for those players and if Jalen Waddle will come back. This, as you know, it's December. This is a very physical game, and sometimes people's bodies do not respond well to it in December. We will see how the Dolphins finish the season. Headed up to Cleveland in the cold, Barry. Now, as Anthony Weaver said, we get to finally put that narrative to bed that we can't play in a cold environment. So this is. And as you say, Barry, the stakes are high. Tell me what has to happen, Barry. Tell me.
I'm going to tell you, but I will say this also. I want to quickly add Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I always want to call Dorian Finney-Smith, the NBA guard. He's starting a quarterback for Cleveland instead of Jameis. So that's a hell of a lot better than having to go the cold and play Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen or Jordan Love. So you can talk all you want about the cold, but to me, I'd rather play a bad quarterback in the cold, right, and see how they do then. Now, to make the playoffs, they have to obviously win their last 2, and then one of 3 things need to happen. Either the Chargers and Broncos both have to lose their final 2 games, or the Chargers have to lose twice and the Colts have to lose once, or the Broncos have to lose twice and the Colts have to lose once. So people could see Denver losing out. That's not the problem. They go to Cincinnati on Saturday, then they close at home against Kansas City, a game that could be meaningful for the Chiefs if the Chiefs lose against Pittsburgh on Christmas Day and if the Bills beat the Patriots again in Week 18 and beat the Jets. So that's doable. The question is, will the Colts lose? They go to the Giants. Are the Giants going to be winless at home this year? They go to the Giants Sunday, host Jacksonville. Colts are a decent team, but the idea of them winning 3 in a row to end the season when they haven't done that all year, I'm skeptical of that, just like Tony Romo said repeatedly on the air yesterday. Are the Colts good enough, as mediocre as they are, to take care of business and eliminate
the Giants cannot win a game. They are right now winning in the quarterback derby. They're, I saw something where the Raiders screwed up their draft spot by winning a game. If you don't know that teams tank at the end of the year, here's the thing. Brian Daboll, who I'm a huge fan of, I don't know if him or Sheen are safe with the Giants. That Giants organization is not one that makes quick decisions like that. He took them to the playoffs the first year. I think that they are safe, but I also think that they have to lose if they want Cam Ward or
Drew Lock is not going to try to lose. He's trying to salvage his career, as you know. And I know you know, obviously, the players never try to lose. So that, combined with the fact that Anthony Richardson, obviously he's got talent, but I can't fully trust him yet. Don't tell me there's no chance that he doesn't throw 3 picks on Sunday and the Giants win the game and suddenly they have a chance. Now, the Chargers scenario, where you would have Denver with 2 losses, again, which is realistic. The Chargers, though, obviously don't have a terribly grueling schedule. At New England, which played well yesterday in their narrow loss at Buffalo, and then at Las Vegas, which beat Jacksonville yesterday. So the odds are against the Dolphins making it. Their only hope is that the Colts somehow get upset once, either at the Giants or home against Jacksonville, or the Chargers and Broncos both lose out. Maybe you give them a 15% chance, but at least they're still alive, still in the discussion heading into Christmas week.
Definitely. Well, we will be back later on this week. We will get you ready for the Cleveland Browns. Hopefully you have a happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody happy Hanukkah, all of that good stuff. We will be back later on this week on Dolphins in Depth.